When pain becomes purpose, transforming grief into a legacy of love. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I want to begin by honoring an extraordinary woman whose courage has forever changed how I understand resilience. Iayisha Higginbotham is not just a survivor, she is a revolutionary in the quiet, powerful art of transforming unbearable pain into purpose. After losing her son to gun violence, Aisha did something remarkable. She took the recipes her son had loved, the dishes that once brought him joy, and created a food truck business that now feeds her community, both literally and spiritually. In doing so, she didn't just find a way to survive, she created a living testament that refuses to let violence have the final word in her story. Aisha embodies what it means to alchemize grief into a legacy of love that continues to nourish and heal everyone it touches. My conversation with Iayisha on the Soft Girl Era podcast revealed something we must confront together. Gun violence isn't just a series of isolated incidents that happen to other people. It's a public health crisis hiding in plain sight, touching far more American lives than most of us are willing to acknowledge. Let me share something that stopped me in my tracks. A groundbreaking study revealed that 64% of American adults have experienced some form of in person gun violence exposure. Let that sink in for a moment. Nearly 2/3 of us. This exposure goes beyond direct victimization to include hearing gunshots in your neighborhood, witnessing shootings, or knowing someone who has been shot. But here's where we need to be brutally honest with ourselves. This burden isn't carried equally across our communities. Black and Hispanic adults face significantly higher rates of exposure. While white Americans more often experience exposure to firearm suicide, Black and Hispanic communities bear a heavier burden of homicide and community violence. These aren't just statistics on a research paper. These are mothers like Iayisha, who will never see their children graduate. These are fathers who will never walk daughters down the aisle. These are siblings who lose their best friends. These are communities that lose their brightest lights over and over again until trauma becomes as common as air. When we talk about grief, especially the grief of losing a child to violence, our culture often pushes a narrative of timelines and milestones. You'll get over it eventually. Time heals all wounds. You need to move on. But what Iayisha taught me, what she teaches all of us through her journey, is that grief after losing a child isn't something you get over. It's something you learn to live with. It becomes part of your DNA, changing who you are at a cellular level. The question isn't how to erase that grief, but how to carry it in a way that honors both the person you've lost and the life you must continue living. For Iayisha, her cooking became that bridge. Her son had always loved her food, always praised her talent in the kitchen. In launching her food truck, she found a way to keep cooking for him, to keep that connection alive while creating something new from her pain. This pattern of transforming grief into purpose isn't unique to Iayisha, though her specific journey certainly is. Research consistently shows that finding purpose after traumatic loss can be a powerful healing mechanism, especially when that purpose connects to the loved one's memory. Across the country, parents who have experienced the unnatural order of burying their children have established foundations, businesses, community programs, and advocacy initiatives born from their grief. These purpose driven responses to loss create ripple effects of healing and change throughout communities affected by gun violence. What's particularly powerful about these transformations is how they refuse to let violence have the final word. When a mother like Iayisha creates a business that brings joy and nourishment to her community, she's saying this story doesn't end with a gunshot. It continues with every meal I serve, every smile I create, every moment of connection at my food truck window. But we must be careful not to romanticize this journey or suggest that finding purpose somehow erases the pain. The reality is that this transformation is messy, nonlinear, and deeply personal. Some days are still consumed by grief. Some milestones, birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, still cut like knives. What Iayisha and others like her demonstrate isn't superhuman strength, but profound human resilience. The capacity to hold both immense pain and meaningful purpose simultaneously. It's not about getting over grief. It's about growing around it, letting life continue to flourish even as the pain remains. This brings me to something essential we must understand about grief, particularly grief born from violence and trauma. It doesn't follow a tidy 5 stage model. It doesn't progress predictably from denial to acceptance. It's as unique as the relationship that was lost, as individual as the person experiencing it. For communities disproportionately affected by gun violence, grief becomes collective, generational, and complex. When exposure to violence is normalized, when children grow up hearing gunshots as background noise, when families attend more funerals than graduations, grief becomes woven into the fabric of daily life. This is why both individual healing journeys, like Yaisha's and broader community approaches, are necessary. One mother's food truck won't solve systemic violence, but it creates a space of nourishment and connection in a community that desperately needs both. Meanwhile, research based interventions must address the wider patterns of exposure and trauma. The data is clear and devastating, and Black and Hispanic adults are much more likely to witness shootings or know someone who has been shot compared to white adults. This creates deeper community trauma that passes from generation to generation. The research found that while white adults more often experience exposure to firearm suicide, Black and Hispanic communities bear a heavier burden of homicide and community violence. These findings aren't just academic, they're a call to action for culturally responsive grief support services and community based healing programs specifically designed for communities of color experiencing higher rates of gun violence. The disparities aren't random, they're systemic, and they demand systemic solutions alongside individual healing journeys. What can we learn from Yaisha's journey? How might her story change how we think about grief, purpose, and healing? First, we must recognize that grief doesn't follow a timeline. When supporting someone who has lost a loved one to violence, our role isn't to fix their grief, but to walk alongside them with compassion. Don't tell them to move on. Don't measure their healing by how quickly they return to normal. Instead, create space for their grief to be expressed however it needs to be. Second, consider how negative energy from trauma might be channeled into positive action, whether through creative expression, community service, or entrepreneurship. Finding purpose can be a powerful part of the healing journey. For Yaisha, it was cooking. For others, it might be advocacy, art, education, or countless other paths. Third, we must acknowledge the disproportionate impact of gun violence on Black and Hispanic communities and support initiatives addressing both prevention and healing in these communities. This means investing in trauma informed care, community based healing programs, and policies that address the root causes of violence. When I reflect on my conversation with Iayisha, I'm struck by how she embodies what we talk about on the Soft Girl Era podcast: the strength found in vulnerability, the power in choosing joy despite circumstances, and the revolutionary act of caring for yourself and your community in a world that often devalues both. There's a particular wisdom that comes only through profound suffering, not because suffering is good, but because navigating it requires depths of courage and creativity that might otherwise remain undiscovered. Yaisha didn't choose her pain, but she did choose what to create from it. In many spiritual traditions, there's a concept that our deepest wounds become our greatest gifts to the world, not because the wounding itself was good, but because the healing process transforms us into vessels of compassion and wisdom. Yaisha's food truck isn't just a business, it's a testament to this truth. When you cook with love, you feed the soul. Yaisha told me during our interview, this simple statement captures the essence of her healing journey, finding ways to continue pouring love into the world even after experiencing its deepest cruelties. I want to leave you with this challenge. Refuse to look away from the realities of gun violence in our communities. Refuse to accept that some neighborhoods should expect bullets while others expect safety. Refuse to let grief be something we hide away or rush through. Instead, I challenge you to become witnesses to both the pain and the possibility exemplified by people like Ayesha. When you encounter someone walking through grief, don't try to fix them. Simply show up again and again. Say the name of the person they've lost. Remember their birthdays. Honor their anniversaries, create spaces where both tears and laughter are welcome. And perhaps most importantly, I challenge you to examine how you might transform your own wounds, whatever they may be, into sources of healing for others. Not because you should bypass your own pain, but because within that pain often lies the seed of your most profound contribution to our collective healing. Aisha's journey reminds us that even in our darkest moments, we can create meaning that outlasts our suffering. Her food truck serves more than meals, it serves memory, love, and the radical notion that joy can coexist with grief. It stands as a testament to the truth that violence may take lives, but it cannot take our power to create, to connect, and to love fiercely in the face of loss. The legacy of love that Iayisha has created doesn't erase her pain. It transforms it into something that nourishes rather than destroys. And in doing so, she offers all of us a profound invitation to turn toward rather than away from both our wounds and our capacity to heal. Thank you.